When then 77-year-old Joe Biden ran for president in 2020, he made this pitch to voters.
Look, I view myself as a bridge, not as anything else. There's an entire generation of leaders you saw stand behind me. They are the future of this country.
It was a promise he reportedly signaled to advisors, suggesting he would be a one-term president and serve as a transition figure for the Democratic Party. The problem is that bridge never came. Biden, against all concerns, ran for re-election until he dropped out in July following a disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump. When Biden finally dropped out and passed the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, it was too late. And while the party will examine what it did wrong for years to come, the party needs to do something now. No doubt about it, this election was a referendum on President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. But results down ballot for Democrats actually help prove that. While Donald Trump did win swing states like Arizona and North Carolina, Trumpian candidates like far-right North Carolina nominee Mark Robinson lost his gubernatorial race against Democrat Josh Stein. And as of this hour, Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona is leading far-right Kari Lake in the Senate race, and that race has yet to be called. There's also the progressive lawmakers long demonized by the right and even by some centrist Democrats who outperformed expectations this election. Progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York won re-election decisively and performed better in her district of Queens than Vice President Harris did. And there's the split we saw in Michigan, specifically Dearborn, home to the country's largest Arab American community. At the top of the ticket was Kamala Harris, who failed to distance herself from President Biden's policies on Gaza and didn't reach out to concerned Muslim voters. Down ballot was Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, whose district covers Dearborn. Now, Tlaib, who is of Palestinian descent, did not endorse Kamala Harris. She campaigned on calling out Israel's assault on Gaza and showed solidarity with the Palestinians. In the end, voters in Dearborn voted for Trump over Harris. Congresswoman Tlaib triumphantly sailed to re-election from those very same voters in Dearborn. The message could not be more clear. Democrats desperately need new leadership. These races in Arizona, Michigan, and North Carolina show there is a desire for younger Democratic leaders. They want to move on from the Obama-Biden era into a new, energized Democratic Party that fights for younger voters, blue-collar workers, and putting an end to the war in Gaza. The onus now is on Democrats to act as the Progressive Political Action Committee Justice Democrats wrote after Trump's win, saying, "It is time to end the era of career politicians and the corrupt campaign finance laws that keep them in power. Either they can choose to step down and welcome a new generation of teachers, nurses, union workers, and everyday people to the halls of power, or they can be forced out at the ballot box. Their time is up." Joining me now is the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, Abdullah Hammoud. Mayor Hammoud, it's great to have you back on the show. The last time you were on this program was back in February. President Biden was still very much in the race. I want to play for you and our viewers what you said to me at the time, the warning that you gave when it came to Gaza. Watch.
The residents in Dearborn actually feel betrayed by current President Biden because he had promised decency and he promised to lead with humanity in the White House. And what we have found since the events of October 7th are anything but. To only send a campaign manager as the first form of engagement as your delegation to the city of Dearborn to speak with the Arab community or the Muslim community is a complete slap in the face.
So that was, as we mentioned, 10 months ago. Since then, Mr. Mayor, neither Vice President Kamala Harris or Joe Biden went to Dearborn. Instead, Donald Trump filled that void. He exploited voter outrage with these, whatever you want to call them, but certainly photo ops. And it's safe to say that it worked to some extent.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. What I would tell you is on the ground here, people feel extremely betrayed by the president and by the current administration. Just today, there was a funeral for 18 individuals in the city of Dearborn offering condolences to the families who have lost loved ones in Lebanon. 18 individuals, the majority of whom are women and children. And so while I see all the pundits all over social media trying to examine what happened in the city of Dearborn, my message is this. If you have not come to the city to speak to its families, to speak to its residents, intelligence, then you will have no understanding for what actually unfolded this last election cycle. Yes, there was a rebuke of Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket for failing to distance herself from President Biden. But as you mentioned, there was wide support for the pro-justice, anti-war candidates, including individuals like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah, explain that a little bit for us, if you can, more for us, if you can. How much of a part did Gaza play in this election? I mean, we saw the vice president perform as poorly as she did in Michigan. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib did well. She campaigned against Israel's assault, outperformed her decisively in Dearborn. And you even had Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who is pro-Israel, but argued a nuanced position on Israel violating international law. And she was even able to win her Senate race in Michigan.
If you look at the predominantly Arab American precincts here in the city of Dearborn, Vice President Harris only captured anywhere between 12% to 18% of those votes. These are precincts in which President Biden captured nearly 80% 4 years ago. That should tell you how strongly people feel about the genocide unfolding right now in Gaza and the war that's unfolding currently in Lebanon. We speak to residents each and every single day who are mourning, who are in disbelief at what's happening. And for nearly a year, we have cast the warning signs. We have tried to tell the party officials, tell all the candidates who are pursuing office, you need to distance yourself from the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. You need to stand up for what's right, be on the side of justice, be against wars, because people are tired and sick of it. And we've seen this playbook unfold now for decades across the Middle East.
Let me ask you more broadly speaking about the Democratic Party. A lot of people have looked at you as an up-and-coming member of that party. What do you make of this need, this much-needed wake-up call for Democrats across the country, not just in Michigan? Do you see them in desperate need of a pivotal shift for the strategy and the ideology and the causes that they fight for, among them, which, of course, is Gaza and, as others have mentioned, more friendly working class policies?
What I'll tell you is I identify as a Democrat not because of those who are currently in leadership within the Democratic Party. I identify as a Democrat because of the values that were instilled in me standing up for workers and unions' rights. If it were up to me, I'd fire everybody across the Democratic National Party, especially those advising on policy and on messaging. It's not simply as whatever is favorable in the polls is what you then communicate on. You have to stand for what's right. You have to be bold. In the country that is America, the world's greatest country, when you're pursuing the highest office in the globe, what is a failed message is saying that you're the right candidate because you're not the other guy. That is a failed policy message. That is a failed communication message. And obviously, the evidence is clear in the election results just last week. If you are running for the highest office in the globe, you should talk about how you want to transform and improve people's lives altogether. When you are asked a question of how will you differentiate yourself from the current president, simply answering that you're not Joe Biden, and secondly, you're not Donald Trump, that's a very insufficient answer. You want to inspire people to come out to the ballot box, not cast fear and tell them, if you don't vote for me, you're left with the other guy. I'm not sure who advised in that messaging. For nearly a year, we advised all the campaigns to not do that, to not approach this community and try to wag their finger at them and saying that if you don't vote for me, you ultimately get the other guy. That was obviously a failed message. And don't come to a community that is suffering from genocide, that has to bury its family and friends, who have, certain residents who have buried over 70 individuals over the last year, and tell them that things could get worse. If you have never attended a funeral for 12 people or for 20 people, or even for one, and their bodies were not able to be buried, so the dignity of burial was not even present, don't dare come to this community and try to lecture us about how things could get worse.
I want to give you a chance to respond to some who have been pointing the fingers at Muslim voters who went to Trump. When asked about the impact of the Gaza war, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman singled out your city, saying, quote, "So Dearborn delivered for Trump. Okay, congratulations. You're going to love the next Muslim ban." Your reaction to this tone-deaf and offensive comment from a Democratic senator from Pennsylvania?
I think Fetterman has done more for the state of Israel than he has for the residents of Pennsylvania. And obviously, you saw the election results in Pennsylvania, so those will speak for itself. I don't think anybody should ask John Fetterman what's happening in the city of Dearborn. Come to speak to our residents. Again, this is where folk try to analyze precinct data and determine and pontificate on what actually unfolded. People here feel betrayed. They want a president who is seeking to reinstill decency and morality back to the White House. And we did our part. For nearly 1 year, we warned the Democratic presidential candidates on the issue of Gaza. But what happened? They stoked hatred towards university protesters who were standing up against genocide. They wagged their finger at residents who thought that they could not go to the ballot box and morally fill in the bubble for the Democratic candidate, given the onslaught and the current genocide that's unfolding. The ethnic cleansing in North Gaza that's happening right now, that's happening under the current Democratic president. The nearly over 100,000, few 100,000 killed or injured and the millions displaced, that's happening currently under the current Democratic president. And so don't come to us and tell us about things would be different after they assume office. Tell us today why it was worth the risk of a Donald Trump presidency for you to stand and